Okay, welcome back to the show. And today I've got a great show for you all. Today I met Mr. Joe Cabray, who you will know from Over the Top Wrestling. Joe has been a wrestler on the island of Ireland for many, many years and a promoter. So, with the past year that's been in it, I caught up with Joe to find out what the pandemic has been like for business with OTT and what kind of challenges they've faced, and basically heading into 2022, what the plans are going forward. So, hope you enjoyed the show and welcome back to the podcast. I'm joined today by the face of OTT, the owner, Mr. Joe Cabray. Thanks very much, Joe, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. How are you doing, man?
Grand, can't complain. It's been a hard few months, like everyone. Been going through the last few months. Been tough for everyone. So looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. So hopefully it's on the horizon.
Hopefully 2022 will be better than the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean the last few years at the same point I can't complain. They've been good years. So I mean some people have been hit worse and ended up with health ailments, but I can't complain. Things have been good.
Yeah. Just want to start out today by talking about a couple of things that came up during the pandemic, and the first one was the speaking out movement, obviously, and we said we'd address it today and talk about it. Just what's your overall thoughts with everything that went on, and were you surprised at the amount of things hidden within the wrestling industry?
I think like everyone, upon reflection, it was really sad to see that there'd been people involved in our wrestling industry that had, hurt or inflicted even abuse among people, that was the main thing to kind of like see as a wrestling industry. And the Irish wrestling industry, it's quite small, it's quite niche. It's only been around, I think the first wrestling school opened in 2002 in the Republic.
Yeah.
But it's the same people that are in the OTT locker room are in, the locker rooms of Phoenix, or in the locker rooms of Fight Factory, and the locker rooms of Titanic. So we're a tight-knit group of people. We're all looking out for each other in the Irish wrestling industry. And
yeah,
the thing that was kind of obvious to me was that no one in the Irish wrestling industry wants to see their colleagues be on the receiving end of abuse, or being hurt, or the next group of people that want to come into our wrestling industry see them being exposed to abuse. And nobody wants to see our fans, the fans that have supported us, and the fans are the ones that make this possible. Nobody wants to see the fans on the receiving end of abuse. So there was so many people as well in the Irish wrestling industry that came together and said, well, first off, how do these issues happen, and how can we make sure that they don't happen again? Like from an OTT perspective, which is the only one I can speak from, I mean, we went and we spoke to high-level members of the Garda Síochána, we spoke to members of Child Protection Agency, TUSLA, we spoke to our own legal team and other organisations as well in terms of safeguarding. But the overall consensus was that these are complex and very serious issues that need to be handled by the relevant authorities. And I suppose from my point of view as well, we understand that the systems that are in place are not perfect. They're never going to be perfect, okay? Yeah. So we have to look at these as well and also take on a moral view, which we have. But that was the advice as well in terms of like legal, is that these are serious allegations and they need to be handled by the relevant authorities in that.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And I understand that they're, kind of looking back, there were some fans that wanted probably more transparency on it as well. But, there's data protection on these things as well. Like you can't, from an OTT perspective, we can't go out there and say person A, B, and C have been involved in these allegations, and you can't do that. Also, we're an independent wrestling organization. If these issues become legal issues, we could be kind of like treading on and interfering with those legal issues in those proceedings.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. And it's just to continue on safeguarding the best that we can.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been putting in place, and we'll continue ongoing, making sure that those are of the highest measures.
Yeah, one thing that struck me when I was kind of reading all this stuff was just the people, the good, hardworking people that are in these locker rooms that have never been involved in anything. But when all this stuff was kind of thrown out there, I felt like it probably dragged the whole mood of everyone down. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of people as well that were surprised in the wrestling industry, And as I said, like it's a kind of a new industry, but it's a very tight. Maybe because wrestling demands so much respect because you're giving your body to another person.
Yeah.
We do look out for each other. So as I said, like nobody in the Irish wrestling industry wants to see their colleagues or the fans to support on the receiving end of abuse. So everyone came together and it's like, well, how do we tackle these issues? And I think it's been a force as well to make sure that these issues don't happen again, I suppose.
Yeah. And what kind of steps have you taken within?
As I said, we'll always be in contact with our legal, and we'll always be in contact with. We have contacts with, Garda Síochána, and it's just about continuously updating our safeguarding procedures, and making sure that our talent relations is there to help people if they're on the receiving end of any form of abuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or dealing with any kinds of difficulties as well, I suppose.
Yeah. So it's just about kind of trying to protect people.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the number one goal.
So aside from that, then, like, we were going through a pandemic, obviously, and things have been tough. What has it been like in a business sense trying to run things in the Republic, we'll say, for example, over the last couple of years? Because the trajectory of OTT, like you were going to do a big show, John Moxley was coming over, we were leading up to that.
Yeah.
Do you felt that it's definitely kind of stopped your momentum?
Yeah, obviously, I think everyone's momentum across the globe. I mean, look at New Japan; they've been stopped, unfortunately, in their tracks. I think everyone's suffered. Every industry, it's just about starting to rebuild. But you can see that there's a lot of hungry young people that are coming up through the training schools at the moment that they just want it, So I do think, I've always said it, I think the future of Irish wrestling is still going to be very, very bright moving forward. Just as I said, we've recently opened our training school again there in September, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But the new batch of young people come through. They have a love and a passion for the business, which is great to see. And we've had very little people drop out, usually because wrestling's so difficult, So usually when you have young people come in, they think that you're going to tell them this is the big secret, but they have to realize, look, that there's only a little bit of padding and there's a wooden board and that's what you're landing on. So, but we've had an amazing amount of these young people that have, just persevered, and they're not dropping out. They've a goal to make it, which is great to see. So I do think we're in good hands.
Yeah. During the pandemic, I seen on your Facebook page that I think it was a storage area that you guys had, and the landlord wouldn't let up on it. And what ended up happening there?
I think like most people, we were thinking this pandemic would last 3, 4, 5 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we never went to this landlord and said, look, we can't pay. We went to the landlord and said, look, can we come to some agreement?
Yeah.
But he was just adamant at the time. It's the full rent or get out. You know what I mean? So in the end, I just don't have that kind of cash to keep the, train when you can't have anyone come through the doors.
Yeah.
But it was just, I think at that time as well, it just showed the real piss poor side of humanity, I suppose. You know what I mean? It was just even Landlords. To landlord, like nobody knew what this pandemic was and how like the serious effect of it was. And there we all are trying to, in a pandemic, try to grab all our stuff out of and working through a pandemic. And if you remember at the time, like you weren't even supposed to go more than 5 kilometers from your house. But yeah, here we are trying to get a few people and dismantle rings because of the greed, I suppose, of a landlord. You know what I mean? That he would make us do all this through a pandemic. It's done and dusted. It's just it's a bad memory. But I think the new place that we have now in Cookstown, that's what I always say. I'm a big firm believer. Like everything happens for a reason, and it
Yeah.
happened for a reason because we ended up getting a place now it's bigger, it's better. We have the ability now to have 2 rings set up. So everything happens for a reason, and there was a silver line at the end of it, because I do feel the school that we have now is just is tops. We've even got a cinema room in it. You know what I mean?
All right.
And we have access to the guy who's our landlord has a whole props division. So we've access to movie sets, we've access to, costumes. It's tenfold better place. So
Yeah.
we worked it better.
So you've got stuff for outside the ring, then promo spaces. and
Promo
stuff like that.
space, all the promo space we need. There's lights and stuff that are already there for us to use. It's just been a gift, I suppose. Yeah.
If we focus on yourself for a minute and rewind back, say before that you went to WWE even, how long have you been wrestling in Ireland?
God, I don't even know. It's that
Yeah.
long. So like as I was talking to one of the guys there yesterday, I think like the first Irish wrestling, independent wrestling shows in the Republic of Ireland took place, I think, around the year 2000, 2001. I think the first wrestling school opened in 2002. So yeah, I'd say I'm probably involved in maybe 16 years, I suppose, maybe. Yeah.
And I looked at an interview with you recently about the time you went to WWE then, and you kind of just said it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
I've said this before, when I got signed, I was 30, which is quite late.
Yeah.
They don't not usually signing 30-year-olds. So I knew I had to get there and get out of NXT. I knew I needed to go to the main roster and to stand a chance, because they're not going to keep investing somebody who's in their 30s.
Yeah.
But I got a concussion and tried to come back probably sooner, because I was hungry at the time. I putting so much into this, and came back too soon, and then got another concussion, and it was just like, I suppose then the whole walls was just like, it just, I personally knew I was just, my time was taken, so the whole, it just wasn't working for me at the time. I mean, it was just, I suppose, put it down to bad luck or whatever it was, or just not meant to be. But like, I was there and I was like, I probably need to get out of here within about 18 months. And then you get 2 concussions, which nearly put me out for, so long. It was just like, this is just a bummer.
Yeah. And did you have any idea when you were kind of winding up there and going to come home about running your own promotion, something like OTT, or did you learn anything in WWE to bring over here?
You see, I'd always been in the promotional aspect of wrestling from the get-go, because I started out with Irish Whip Wrestling, but the main idea of Irish Whip Wrestling was to start a training school, create Irish wrestlers, and then promote wrestling shows. So I was involved in that from that aspect of being in the promotional side as well. So I mean, around 2008 to 2011, we were doing. I was on the promotional side of organizing events that were doing events in France, Romania, Bulgaria, Switzerland. So I'd always come from the promoter aspect. So when I went to WWE, I suppose I was always still interested in it, but I'd always be looking at how they were doing their house show lights, and how did they move their equipment around. So when I came back, I was thinking like, well, what's next? I really didn't think that I was going to stay in the wrestling industry. I thought I was going to move on to something else, but always have a foot in it, whether it be part-time, maybe doing a handful of shows, or, have a wrestling school. But I didn't think I'd still be, so many years on, still involved, I suppose. Yeah. Lucky, I suppose.
Yeah. I remember those first few shows in the Tivoli, and I brought guys that were not wrestling fans. And they were big into the lads from the flats, and those kind of things. And it was a €10 at the time. My friend Kevin said to me, it was the best €10 I've ever spent in my life.
Yeah, it was, and I suppose at the time,
and the wards, of course. As well.
But I suppose at the time, the idea was that when a wrestler came to the court, and if you're not a fan, you knew what they were about and what they were bringing to the table, and that's why we had all those crazy kind of characters and gimmicks back in the day, and it worked well. It was very gimmicky back at the start, but I think it had to be gimmicky to you know, get people involved and get people interested in, you know.
Yeah.
As you said, like, you brought fans that probably weren't big wrestling fans, but they kind of left maybe saying, I'll definitely do this again.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it grew.
And then he went back to another show with me the time Sabu was there as well.
Yeah. So, it was just kind of like building at the time. There were great times, great memories, yeah.
I think those characters are just lacking in the business at the top level these days.
Yeah.
Even I was talking to the Godfather about it the other day. I think maybe the world is too sensitive for certain things, or
the world has definitely changed. Yeah, I mean, you got to look at these, at whatever you're doing, I suppose, from every aspect. I still think gimmicks can work. They're just different gimmicks now, I suppose. Like, you know, I suppose, look at Orange Cassidy and stuff. So those gimmicks they're still there. They're just different now, I suppose. You know what I mean?
Kind of toned down a little bit, maybe.
Toned down a little bit and just coming from it, I suppose, from a different view, a different aspect, yeah.
Question here from John Brooks. He emailed me. I was asking fans for questions during the week, but I specified to email me. So anyone who didn't email me, their question won't be asked, unfortunately. So John Brooks wants to know, who's the toughest wrestler you've ever faced?
Oh my God. So when I was breaking in, I'll tell the story real quick. When I was breaking in, there was a big Canadian guy. He was probably about 6 foot. I think he was about 6'5". He's still around, Peter Smith. Gigantic guy. And just had, I mean, this was very early on. So I was at the tail end of, this would have been Oric Williams, who's a real old school promoter. I don't think he's with us anymore. He's not with us anymore. He passed on. But like, he would also come from that old school wrestling aspect, Peter Smith, of, you know, respect and stuff like that, you know. So he'd be testing you every night, but hard hitting. But you'd have this guy in the dressing room said, you know, when we're in there, you know, you make sure you open up your chest. It's like, as much as I say, I'm gonna beat and chop the fuck out, you know what I mean? So, you know, realizing you had to go through that every night and see like a guy that was 6'5", 6'7", that is going to chop the shit out of you. It was just like, Jesus. But yeah, he was a tough guy. I don't know. I suppose I came from the wrestling business now, where being tough it's not really a thing anymore, I suppose. You know, I used to say to my students, you know, if you did that to somebody in the ring when I was breaking in, they just beat the shit out of you. But you don't really, I mean, it's a good thing. You don't really get that much anymore, which is a good thing, I suppose.
It's like you said earlier about people kind of protecting each other now.
Yeah, it is. It's a business now, a lot more. It's just a different business. But back in the day, like, I suppose the tail end of when I was breaking in, if you messed up in the ring, they'd probably beat the shit out of you. You know what I mean? It wasn't unusual.
I want to talk to you about the night that Finn showed up at OTT.
Yeah.
How much information did you have about that? And was it just a thing that they thought it was a good idea for his documentary, or?
So Fergal's always been really cool. He, I think he's a good care. He's a massive care as well for Irish wrestling. He still checks in with a lot of the people as well, because he would have broken in with them, like, you know, like Paul Tracy and Paddy Morrow and Sean Maxer, you know, they would have all been around that NWA Ireland time. So he's a lot of time for the lads that are still around. But yeah, he called me and he called me one night and he was like, I'm coming. He said that it must have been that would have been December, wasn't it? It was like Christmas
December,
show. He said, I'm coming home. He says, but I might ask if I can do an appearance on the show. And I was just like, yeah, that'd be great. But in my mind, I was like, oh, there's no way they're going to allow him to be on the show, like, you know. And he rang me again. I goes, so how possible is this? And he goes, oh, I don't know. He said, I asked, but they haven't come back to me. I was like, oh, that's the beginning of the end. And then he rang me. He goes, it looks like, he said, it hasn't been signed off on. He said, but it looks like they might let me do it. I was like, there's no way. Yeah. I didn't believe it until the day he was in the Tivoli that day, but it was kept super secret. Like, I mean, nobody knew. We brought him into the back door. Like, I mean, I didn't even, not because loose lips will sink ships, so I didn't even tell. I'd say there was a handful of people on the day that actually knew until Finn walked in through the back door. That was about it.
What was the reaction like backstage? When
everyone was, because a lot of people still know him, you know, because they would have worked with him coming up through the business. Like, as I said, like some of the old school guys like Paul Tracy, Paddy Morrow, Sean Maxer would all be, and myself, we would have all come up through the ranks with him. But the rest of the guys was just like, my God, you know. I think that day as well, we had Ricochet and Osprey on the show as well. Like, so it was just thinking back to it, like, think about the amount of just talent in that Tivoli back then. Will Osprey, Ricochet, and Finn Balor all standing in the same backstage area. Like, they were just crazy times, I suppose. Yeah.
And do you have a relationship with WWE, or did they ask you? Did you have to give them any footage or anything of him being there, or what way was it filmed?
Like, yeah, like, I mean, like there's ways of talking to them, but we don't have any kind of we're not like in the Progress ICW, WXW,
Triple H showing up there and stuff.
Yeah,
like that. So
we're still 100% on our own. But yeah, I think it was just a thing of like, well, OTT gets to have Finn Balor on the show, and we get some footage of Finn, you know, returning home. Yeah.
And then in terms of AEW, what are you thinking with what they're doing at the moment in their product?
I, like, through the pandemic, like, I just kind of I wasn't really focusing much on wrestling, you know. So to be honest with you, I haven't really been keeping up to it, you know. But I've heard from a lot of people, it's been an exciting time in to see it. I personally, like, towards the end of so the pandemic started around March, but I was kind of like, I don't watch as much wrestling as I used to, you know. I rely on other people to kind of tell me about, you know, what's going on and who's hot and, you know, who's doing great things, and then I might check them out. But I just don't have the time anymore. I suppose as well, I've been burned out.
There's so much wrestling.
There's so much wrestling, you know. But as a wrestling fan, I'm now 39, but I've been a wrestling fan since I was 4 years of age. So I've been, and I mean, not just a wrestling fan, like, just totally hooked on wrestling since I was 4 years of age. I just think I just a little bit burned out. I still watch it. I watched the Tokyo Dome was the first thing I've watched now in a long time. Yeah, and I quite enjoyed it, to be honest.
And we were talking earlier about that show you were supposed to have with Moxley on it, but then obviously, you know, what happened and whatever. Did you have to okay that with AEW, or is he kind of independent?
I think at the time, yeah, he was independent, so we were able to get him. I don't know what the guy's contract situations are now. I don't know what the situations are. I do know at the time there was a lot of issues with them not wanting to do outside stuff, just because, and totally understandable, like, there's a pandemic, you don't want someone getting injured on a flight or on a show, you know.
I seen him having a crazy match there a couple of months ago. It was one of these what do they call, death matches. So like, you know, you wouldn't be putting them through that kind of pain.
No, but like, I don't know. I think as well with AEW, I think a lot of their contracts are different. Some people still have the ability to take their own bookings, and some people are exclusive to AEW, as far as I know. Like, so I've reached out to some people before, and they've told me, look, I signed a contract that's totally exclusive, and then some people are, you know, are able to do their own stuff.
Is there anyone there that you would like to get over for a show?
I still think Mox is the dream, you know. You know, he did
what about Chris Jericho?
We'd love to have Jericho. It's just, I don't know. Like,
a lot of people were saying a couple of weeks ago, because you guys were running and Fozzy were playing on the same night.
Yeah.
That Jericho will show up there.
Yeah.
Like, I think when he's on tour doing band stuff, I think wrestling's kind of
and it could be. Yeah, he was kind of like a weird one. Who knows? But I don't know if even the stadium was big enough for Jericho. I think, like, if you were going to put, I don't know, if you're going to put Jericho in an OTT ring, it might need to be somewhere bigger. Like, who knows?
Yeah. We'll talk a bit about OTT on demand.
Yeah.
And how that's been going for you since the pandemic.
To be honest, like, I mean, without the support of the fans who kept on their subscription, it would be a tough one. The support of the fans has been amazing, like, you know. It's not just myself that's appreciative of them, it's the locker room, it's the young people coming up through the business that are appreciative, because without them, we can't keep, I keep saying that we like, the fans are the most important aspect. We can't do this without the fans and without the support, you know what I mean? And we are an independent wrestling organization, you know, so it is those things like the merchandise, and it is those things like the VOD that are helping us take over. But probably wouldn't have had the pandemic if it wasn't for the VOD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of the pandemic as well, obviously, when you first start running in Belfast, you're running shows with reduced capacity. And like you guys have got a huge crew now, from announcers to cameramen to everything. How did you get it to work?
Well, that was going back to like the AWR days, the American Wrestling Rampage days, when we were doing shows around, France and all around Europe. The main reason the main reason why it dipped down is obviously the European economy went down the shitter, but it was also as well as because it's just too expensive keeping 30 wrestlers on the road for, a long period of time. And those tours were 2 to 3 weeks. So keeping, 30 wrestlers, and then I think those shows were so big as well. We probably had about 35 production staff. It's just colossal, think about all the hotel rooms. But even at an OTT level, which is like the branding is probably more visible of OTT, but the shows are kind of smaller. But that's the thing about wrestling. It's just such a big show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to take carloads of people to Belfast, and it's just that's the biggest issue with wrestling. It's such a gigantic show. You're talking production crew, you're talking wrestlers, you're talking ring announcers, you're talking referees, you're talking medics.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
That's actually one thing I wanted to talk about, medics. A couple of the guys got a few small injuries the time when I first went back to the show. I think it might have been an eye injury, and I think Bonesaw landed on his leg that night. What's different now? Like, how much different is it now and from back in the day of having these medical professionals there? Like, and how much safety is there involved in it now?
We always had medics from the get-go. I've been vocal on this. I don't think a first aider really cuts it. And then there's been wrestling shows throughout Europe that don't even have a first aider, which I think is it's reckless.
Yeah.
And basically what it is it's a wrestling promoter telling you that I don't really care about the people in the ring. So or the fans in the crowd, because sometimes like a fan could faint or whatever like that, you know what I mean? You need to have a medic. You've a big bunch of people congregating to watch a wrestling show. And the wrestling it's not a football game. These wrestlers are lifting on each other and slamming each other, you know what I mean? So we've always had a medic at OTT, and I think it's very important that the standard comes up as well in terms of care for the performers and the fans that attend these shows. But I don't know what it's like on the rest of the scene, but for a long time there it was quite abysmal, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the first thing I noticed, because it was actually the first independent show I was at in a long time. And I noticed 2 doctors in the corner and an ambulance outside, just in case, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see.
Yeah.
Yourself then, your in-ring career, is that over for you, or is that something you're going to kind of play by ear?
I don't know. I mean, I was supposed to come back and do that show before COVID, but I don't really have any aspirations to go back in and do the ring, and start doing it as I'm 39. I don't know if I do feel good. I'm still in good shape. I still enjoy going to the gym and all, but I don't know if when I ended wrestling for myself as a full-time performer, it was twofold. It was because I couldn't produce the shows and wrestle on them. It was just too much. But I was also getting really, really, my body was starting to break. My hips were bad, my neck was bad. But I feel great now.
Probably because of the big long break.
Break as well, yeah, and just having the downtime as well to work on more things like flexibility and rehab more injuries as well, and becoming more knowledgeable as well. So I kind of tied into this thing with Be Cool and Danny Cross.
Yeah, some good stuff.
So I mean, if that ever comes off, well, then I might get back into the ring. But I don't know if I'm not itching, to be honest, either. You know,
he seems to be pushing your buttons though.
Huh?
He seems to be pushing your buttons.
Pushing the buttons since before there was even a camera around, to be honest with you, yeah.
If you were to say, I know it's very hard to say, but what the plans are for the rest of 2022 and what you hope to achieve both in Ireland and the Republic, or in the North, what would it be?
Just to get it back to where we were before the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't explain to you the energy backstage, regardless of the energy in the crowd, the energy backstage from these people. I always find wrestling kind of fascinating, that people don't really realize that when they get to a wrestling show and they watch the finished product, they think that because of the likes of theater, there's been months and months and months of rehearsal and preparations. These are basically performers that are so talented that they get together on the day and they create a wrestling match and they perform it in front of a live crowd. But the energy backstage, just to be, that's what I love about pro wrestling, is just to be backstage with so many talented people is just like, you're walking around and you see like someone like Be Cool and you're like, that guy is just, he's so funny, he's always on, bop, 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 and then he'll come to you and he'll say, what do you think of this idea? And I'm like, that idea is brilliant. And then you have Will Ospreay in the corner. It's just like, I don't know, just to be in a room with that kind of talent, you know what I mean, and session mat, and there's so, and then as I said, the talent to be in the wrestling school, you know, 3-4 days a week, and to see the energy of these young people that want to learn pro wrestling is quite special as well. Like, so I'm lucky as well to be involved and be around so much good energy. I suppose it's really good.
Yeah. So the future is looking bright as well.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it just depends on the pandemic situation, but I think, yeah, if we can get it back, the new crop of people coming in and the people who are still currently involved in the wrestling business in Ireland are just, they're all getting kind of raring to go to get it back to where it was.
And I noticed the fans have a big voice as well. And I see CJ West and I see Session Mott versus Terry Thatcher finally as well. That was, definitely I'll give him a shout out. That was a hard slog. That was about 2 years work.
Broke. He got there though.
You got there in the end. Joe, listen, thanks a million for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Best of luck for 22.